Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Today's interview is part 2 of Danny Seraphine. We started part 1 in Chicago. About a month later, Danny came to Nashville and we did part 2. In this part, Danny talks about Chicago and the changes that happened after Terry Kath passed. And he talks about Terry's passing and that day. I hope you enjoy it. And if you do, please remember to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Hope you enjoy it. Danny Seraphine. What was your most memorable concert?
There's a bunch of them.
What's some of them?
One of them was, I remember the first time we played the Fillmore West. It was us and Santana opening for Janis. And Santana's, it's the first time I met Carlos, and his drummer didn't show up. So he comes running backstage and he said, Danny, can you play the blues? And I said, well, I'm from Chicago, I think so. And he said, my drummer didn't show up, I need a drummer, come on up. So I came up and played his set, and that kind of formed the bond with us, you know, that we were very dear friends for many, many years. I mean, we still are, but I've lost touch with him. But, you know, I'll never forget that because I had to, you know, just kind of play by, you know, watching him, and, you know, it was really a great experience to, you know, to be with such a great guitar player, you know, and just jamming with him, you know, for an hour.
Now, when he played Woodstock, he had a approximately 18-year-old drummer named Michael Shreve.
Yeah.
Is he still around?
Well, he's around, and I do talk to him. Every so often we kind of run into one another. I think he lives in Seattle. But so I've lost track of him somewhat. I mean, actually, thinking of 6 months ago, through a friend, he contacted me, and we weren't able to connect. He was coming into L.A. and I was leaving, but, you know, it was before he was in the band.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So that was prior to Woodstock?
Oh yeah, prior to, oh yes, before Woodstock for sure. It was 1969.
Okay, yeah, Woodstock was August 1969.
Was it August of 69?
Mm-hmm.
Was it really?
August the 16th.
Wow. It was before Woodstock, because Santana had no, maybe it was 68. It was 68, I believe. It must have been 68. Time flies. But yeah, Santana had no record out. It was before he even had a record out. And ours had just come out. He hadn't done a record yet. It was right before he did his album.
What was Carnegie Hall like?
Well, it was, you know, intimidating as heck, because every celebrity, including Leonard Bernstein, we knew where he was going to be out in the audience, you know. And it wasn't, Carnegie Hall is not a great venue for electric music, for rock. So it was beautiful in one sense and horrible in another, because we really couldn't hear very well because we were too loud for the place. So it kept reverberating back. But the vibe from the audience, that part of it was really exciting, and then all the people that were coming to see us, you know. At that time I was taking drum lessons. Whenever I'd hit New York, I was taking lessons with the legendary Joe Jones, who's an amazing, Papa Joe Jones, a drummer, the best brush player of all time. And he was in the audience, and the first time he'd ever seen me play, and I was really nervous. I was more nervous about him than Leonard Bernstein, to be honest. Although Leonard Bernstein's pretty intimidating, because at that time, our producer, Jimmy Guercio, wanted us to do something with Leonard Bernstein, and he just kind of, I don't know if I can do that. He was a little bit uppity about it, you know.
Yeah.
But it was still cool because, you know, the guy was brilliant. So Carnegie Hall was kind of a mixed bag of stressful in the sense that we couldn't hear each other very well. We didn't really think we were playing very well, but when I listened to the record, there's some wonderful moments.
That's what I was going to ask. Well, the fact that it was being recorded, knowing that, did it make you more nervous?
Yeah.
Make it a bit more stressful?
Yeah, because there were 1,000 mics in my drums, and, you know. Yeah, and it was stressful because we didn't, you know, so it's like you had to kind of fake it, because you, in your heart, you didn't feel like you were playing very well, but you knew you had to at least pretend like you were playing well. One, for the audience. Two, you really had to play well.
Was it just one night, or did you do multiple nights?
Only multiple nights. Recording?
Yeah,
We recorded, I think, the whole thing.
Yeah, I know, but did y'all do more than one performance?
At Carnegie Hall?
Yeah.
Oh, it was a week straight
Oh,
at
okay.
Carnegie Hall.
That's-
Yeah, and it sold out for. That's what was so cool. It was a week at Carnegie Hall, every night. So.
So you had something to pick from.
Oh yes, yeah, but it was still hard because, you know, unlike other rock bands, we needed to play in tune. We needed to play with some dynamics. And you know, the horn players had to play with a certain amount of finesse, otherwise they would overplay and overblow and, you know, be out of tune. So it was, you know, it was pretty tough, but it was a great, you know, still a great memory.
When you do a live album like that, how much room do you have to repair something if something's not like you wanted it, or did you go back?
We didn't go back. No.
You didn't?
That's as it is. Yeah, you can go back and you know, most people do go back. Fixed vocals, double background vocals, double horns. We did other live things subsequently, live TV and stuff, where we were able to go back and fix. It's kind of fun doing that, but it's kind of cheating a little bit.
Yeah.
But no, that's as is. There's nothing changed at all.
Buddy Rich, you said, was a big influence on you.
Huge.
Did he ever see you play?
You know, I don't believe he did, but I hung out with him a few times.
What was that like?
That was great. It was great because he was my idol. You know, Buddy Rich and Elvin Jones. One night I hung out with Elvin Jones and Buddy Rich in New York, and it was so cool because these are my two biggest influences. You know, at that time, Buddy was first, and then as I got into more complicated jazz things and brushes and, you know, stuff, Elvin and Tony Williams and Max Roach and you know, Joe Jones, Papa Joe Jones. So hanging out with them was, Elvin and I we had a few too many to drink, and we went to a club to see Buddy. And Buddy kind of pulled a dirty trick on him. You know, they had kind of a rivalry thing going. They were friendly, they were friends, good friends, but Buddy was, you know, he had an edge to him, you know, he really did. And I loved him, you know, because I just was so idolized and infatuated with his playing that Buddy asked Elvin to sit in. And that's a big band, you know, that's a big band with charts and stuff. And Elvin's a phenomenal drummer, but he's not a big band drummer, you know. And Elvin, like, you know, he kind of forced him. Elvin was going, no, and he said, no, you have to. He called him up from the stage. And after the show, I really thought Elvin was going to punch him, but he didn't. He was like, Elvin was a really strong guy. He picked Buddy up and he gave him like a bear hug and squeezed, but he said, please, no, I didn't mean it. I mean, you know, it was really a cool evening. It was amazing, hanging out with the two of them. So that was one of my high points in my life. Besides my son being born and kids and things that are much more.
What was Terry Kath like?
He was free spirit, very free spirit, down to earth, completely down to earth. A no bullshit kind of guy. Didn't like success and stardom. Did not agree with him at all, which was part of his tragic ending. You know, of the drugs and you know, he was not happy with. He just loved the play. He was the true warrior of the band, in my opinion. You know, and so the corruption that kind of comes along with superstardom, so to speak, it really affected him, you know, in a negative way. It was hard on him. Wonderful person. He was the best guitar player I've ever played with. It changed my life. You know, I mean, I really, really miss him as a person, but I really also missed him as a musician. The band was never the same. I mean, I'm not saying there wasn't greatness, but we really lost. I guess my analogy of Chicago, if you had to, was almost like an anatomy of a human being. Was like, I always thought of myself as the heart of the band, and Terry, the soul of the band, and the horns, the identity of the band, and Peter, the voice of the band, and where else is left? I don't know. There's not much else left, but that's kind of how I always looked at the band, you know. Mm-hmm. And so losing Terry, we lost our soul, you know. And it took us a while to find it again, you know. Really, we were lost for a few years after Terry passed away, you know.
Well, you know, as a fan,
yeah,
I remember that day. I was devastated. I couldn't even comprehend it. It changed. Of course, I still went to see you guys. But to me, especially like being a guitarist,
Yeah.
it's pretty hard because I could have gone to see Terry just play by himself, you know.
Yeah. Me too. It was never, like I said, there was no guitar player. I've never played with one as good. I played with some great guitar players, Larry Byram, you know, Chris Pennick. I played with some great guitar players, but none that compared to Terry. Yeah.
Yeah, to me, he had it all.
He did. He really did. He did have it all. Amazing rhythm guitar player, incredible soloist. You created.
Acoustic, freeform,
Yeah, yeah.
electric.
Got a great voice, wonderful, like Ray Charles type voice, our soulful voice. Yeah, Terry was one of a kind, no doubt. When I got the call from our manager, we had just gotten a new manager, and he called me and said, "You're not going to believe this, Terry shot himself." And I said, "What?" It didn't surprise me because he was playing with, he always carried guns around and did way too many drugs, and he was in a bad space. So I'd heard that he was at one of the road crews. His name was Don Johnson, one of our roadies, and so I said, "I don't believe it." And they said, "You stay away from there because all the press is going to be there." I said, "No, I got to see." So I shot over to Don's house, and he answered the door like I was almost like a life preserver. The guy was freaked out. He just flipped out. He said, "I didn't mean it, Danny. I told him not to play Russian. I told him to put his guns away." And Terry was sitting on a couch with his head down like this, you know, just peaceful, you know. And it was just, I just went and sat down next to him and, said goodbye to him and said, "I know it's been hard on you, and I hope you're going to be happy, and I'm going to miss you." And, you know, it was just, I'm kind of glad in a way I was able to do that. I feel like I was lucky to be able to say goodbye to him, you know, the right way, you know. And it was really tragic. It took the band years to recover from that, and emotionally, you know. In some ways, it brought us closer together. It really formed a very, very strong, unique. We were already a brotherhood. That's the one thing about Chicago. At least the way I want to remember it is that we were a real brotherhood, and Terry was really an integral part of that. And losing that made us appreciate each other even more, and how tenuous life is and what we're doing, and how careless we were and how careless we were living. And we continued to live carelessly. You know, drugs continued on in the band after that, you know, which I hated because I didn't like drugs to begin with because I saw what it was doing to the band and to the individuals, and I didn't like what it did to Terry, and I couldn't handle it. Fortunately, it's not like I was a better person than any of them. I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle playing high, you know. I had to have my wits about me, you know. And also somebody had to be, you know, I was like the designated driver of the band, so to speak, for many years. And it was just a grim reminder of our foolishness and carelessness with life. I think all of us could, especially from that era, can relate to that, how careless we were with drugs and sex and rock and roll, you know.
On a brighter note, when that did happen, when it being the success that you achieved with the band, was it what you expected, or was it greater?
God, I never knew what to expect. I was an Italian kid from Chicago, you know, from the streets of Chicago, that never in my wildest dreams ever. That's not the reason I even thought about playing. I just wanted to be great. You know, I was influenced by some great drummers, Gene Krupa, Buddy Rich, and you know, some of the rock guys, Mitch Mitchell, Ginger Baker, Ringo, Hal Blaine, you know. And when I put Chicago together, when I had the vision of what I wanted to put together, it was all the best musicians in the city with great vocalists, and, you know, a combination of a great band with great singers, and just everything, the whole package, you know. And Chicago was the whole package, and it was planned that way, you know. I never, in my wildest dreams, ever expected our band to get as big as it got. You're talking about there was no show business there. This was all music and art, very artistic approach and artistic attitude. You know, it changed. Yeah, we became commercial, and we started thinking commercial and acting commercial.
In a way, towards the end, especially, I say the end, after 1978, they started getting more ballads. But still, even at that, the musicianship was still ahead of 99% of what you hear on the radio.
Yeah, we were very fortunate. We were very fortunate. And as a drummer, I was really fortunate to be able to play almost pretty much whatever I wanted to, especially in the early days when there was, you know, time changes. Like that song Introduction, it's got 3 time changes and 3 tempo changes. It's 4/4, 3/4, 19/8, you know. How many songs, rock bands play that kind of, you know, challenging music for a drummer, you know. So I was very lucky. It changed. I became a 2 and 4 ballad, which was disciplined and hard in the sense of the discipline involved, but it wasn't as fulfilling at all.
What did you think the first time you heard 25 or 6 to 4?
Well, it was 25 or 6 to 4 I thought it was brilliant from day one. When we recorded it, I used if you listen on headphones, there's 2 drum kits. I played it through the first time, just straight. No fills, just totally straight. And the second, everybody thought I was nuts. So I never was able to develop it because our producer, you know, James William Gersio, went along with me. I said, I want to do 2 drum sets. And so then the second time through, I just did the answering, and I played, complementary fills and crashes here, crashes, and then sometimes I doubled. I would play the rock thing with a 4 and a ride on the cymbal, and it was but everybody, they were in the control room because it wasn't mixed correctly, and they're all kind of going there. It was like they're all thinking, this doesn't sound very good. But then when they went to mix the record, they put it up. Wow, it was a puzzle that fit together, and they didn't realize what I was trying to do.
Like on the intro.
Dun 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 ticka ticka chee, dun 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 ticka ticka chee. Yeah.
Was that how you started out doing it?
Yeah. Yeah, I said I just basically, if you listen on headphones, you'll hear it. You know, listen on headphones and you will hear there's 2 separate drum parts. I don't know if it had ever been done in recording, but it was one of the first times, I believe. But I had all kinds of freedom in those days to do. Gersio gave me a lot of freedom. I mean, to the point of like almost obscenely, you know. He'd be in the booth going, play fills. Like during beginnings, he's egging me on, and I'm all over the place playing this, and you know, just as we're going, it's ad-libbing. It's like, you know.
And question 67 and 68?
Yeah. Yeah, the question 67 and 68, that little retard, that's a very classical. Rock bands don't retard, 3 and 4 and you know, it's just. But I was really.
And the feels in it.
I was very lucky. I still to this day, I feel like it was a real privilege to have been able to do what I did and be successful and as I was doing it.
Yet, who could have done it better than you?
I think there's other people. I don't look at myself as a one of a kind. You know, I don't. I just don't. I just happen to be lucky. I happen to be very lucky to be in the right place at the right time with the right band. You know, I paid my dues. I worked hard. I studied. I've studied with some of the best people ever. I was very fortunate. I've been really lucky.
Well, from an outsider's opinion, I think it would have been entirely different had it been a different you or a different Lamb or a different Terry.
It was a band of destiny, really. There's no doubt. We really complemented one another. Even when we were when there was conflicts, we still complemented one another because the conflicts actually created, you know, multi-genre songs. You know, we'd have a song where part of it would be have a country vibe, and then all of a sudden there'd be a jazz thing in there, you know, or a really true Latin thing within a rock thing, or a New Orleans kind of horn vibe within a rock thing, you know. So there was, and it was push-pull. This was the push-pull going on within the band. Peter would be pulling it to the rock thing, I'd be pushing it towards the jazz thing, and we'd compromise and mix it up together and, you know, come up with this cacophony of jazz rock, you know.
It's the Lennon and McCartney thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because in the early records, it was a real group effort, and Robert Lamb, much to his, what's the right word? I mean, I'm really complimenting him, much to his
Credit?
credit. Thank you. Getting old. Much to his credit, allowed people. He would bring in a sketch of a song, right? He knew kind of what he wanted, but he also knew that if he let Danny create something that he believed in, he'd get a better part. Rather than saying, you play this, this, and this, and this, and that's it, I don't want to hear about it. You know, first of all, I'd do this for him, because I was a real rebel in those days. I was a street kid from Chicago who you couldn't tell me anything. I mean, it was ridiculous. So, when Terry was the same way. Terry would, like an introduction. Terry wrote an introduction. What a brilliant piece of music. Absolutely brilliant piece of music, you know, but he would say, what do you feel? Tell me, play what you feel, he'd say. You know, if he didn't like it, he'd tell me, you know. But those two were the most generous with their songs, and I believe they benefited from it, and they realized that. They realized that they couldn't come up with a better part than I could. I mean, I spent my whole life being a drummer, you know, and just like I couldn't, you know, there were certain things that they wanted within a song, but after that, I had license to do anything I wanted, you know. And, you know, I'd go over the edge at times, you know.
What in the world did you think when you heard Terry do the lead on 25 or 6 to 4?
Guitar?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, but that was so natural for him. That was nothing for him. It was just...
That's one of those, like, watchtower kind of things.
I agree.
You know?
Yeah.
Peter. Why did Peter leave? He left before you did.
He did, yes. It kind of run its course. Peter really wanted to go out on his own, and was tired of dealing with this is just my view of it. And I could be wrong, although I don't think so, but, you know, he should really speak for himself on that one. But it was, the band had always been no real leader. There were leaders, but they weren't really out. People didn't acknowledge them as leaders. They just functioned as leaders. And Peter, I think, was tired of the democratic process in the band. At times, created a lot of compromise to the point of watering everything down. Because you can compromise yourself into a mediocrity. Mm-hmm. And so, not that we always did that, but sometimes it happened. But he didn't like. I really believe he really hated and got tired of having to live by what other people wanted to do. And after Terry passed, Peter really was thinking about leaving. He really stuck around, and I'm glad he did. And I'm sure he probably is, and maybe he kind of wishes he hadn't left when he did, because it was really kind of a misunderstanding in a sense of not reading each other's signals correctly. We let the... And you know how it is when you're that successful, you start having people in between you, intermediaries, and not always with your best interest at heart. And I'm not trying to lay this off on anybody, but I believe that had I sat down with Peter one more time and talked to him face to face, because I had talked to him out of leaving a couple of times, talked him out of it. I talked him into joining the band. He's a very kind of a unusual guy. He's very introverted in some respects, and he can be very complicated. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's good, but if you don't read him right, you're not going to understand him. So, if I really believe, had I sat down with Peter and said, you know, really, why do you want to leave, or why are you leaving? And he relayed to me what he relayed to me. You know, we kind of, you know, reconnected a few years ago and talked about all this, and stuff. He told me things I never realized. You know, I just thought he wanted to leave. You know, he just didn't want to tour as much anymore, and he didn't want to. He was just kind of burnt out with the road, and even though we had just made a huge comeback, we did. It was like yeah. I just believe he really wanted to be on his own and make his own decisions and kind of control his own destiny. I mean, if you had to simplify it, I would say that that's it. Really, in essence, what we should have done and what he should have done step back. He could have done a Phil Collins, where he had his solo career and he had Chicago, and one complemented the other.
Yeah.
But our egos wouldn't allow it.
Or Stevie Nicks, you know.
Yeah, our egos wouldn't allow it, as so often that happens, you know. And that was one. The band, there was a weakness of the band, and myself included. I can't really say, oh boy, I was above that. We didn't necessarily support each other's individuality, you know. It was almost like we were threatened by it, so therefore we tried to stifle it. And I believe that that's what led to Peter leaving.
I think that's just human. I think most people would feel that way in a group situation.
Yeah. But it was a bad time to leave. We were at the pinnacle of success.
What was that like, having a non-airplay period of time and then being on top of the world?
Non-airplay was an understatement. It was like we were in the grave and they were throwing dirt on it, you know? Seriously.
But the record sales always...
No, our record sales dropped pretty significantly during the Thumbprint album. And it was just, the band was in a bad space. It was in a really bad space. And what happened was obviously the culmination of Terry, you know, we had tried different things after Terry had passed away, and they just hadn't worked. Bad management, the wrong guy to replace Terry, drugs. Robert, you know, there was still serious drugs going on in the band, and the Thumbprint album. I tried to get David Foster to produce the Thumbprint album, but I was outvoted by the record company, and ironically, Tom Dowd produced us, who was, you know, just an amazing producer. But I knew that he wasn't the right guy for us. At that time, we needed somebody strong. We needed somebody, a musician, who could just put us right in our place and say, no, you know, we needed a taskmaster. And Tom was the type of guy who could come into a really good situation and make it better. But it was a bad situation. We had the writers had run dry. We were writer's block. There was Robert had to check himself in. He was just going through too much cocaine, and it just caught up to him. And you know, it was a bad time. So what I did is to be proactive, and that's what I did. I think maybe my biggest contribution to the band is I got Bill Champlin into the band, because I'd cut a demo and I used Peter and Bill Champlin to sing backgrounds. And when I heard that combination, I said, that's got to be in our band. So I approached Champlin. First I got Peter's blessing, because Peter in his mind told me, he later told me that he was thinking this was kind of going to be his exit, and he felt that if he had Champlin to replace, you know, a great voice, he could leave it with good conscience. He never told me that, but I still, you know, wow, get Champlin and Peter in the same band, those great voices, because we ever since Terry, we had lacked that R&B voice, that deep kind of, and Champlin could sing that way, and he was accomplished, a very good keyboard player. So I got Champlin into the band, yeah, and I got David Foster to produce. That time everybody was willing to listen, because we were on the balls, we were on our back, really, just about. And I got the band away from whoever, the guy who was managing us at the time, and brought it to Irving Nazoff and Howard Kaufman. And you know, I feel that was probably my biggest contribution to the band, because it really revitalized it. David revitalized the band. You know, you can argue with the direction of the music, but really he came in, he wrote with Peter, he wrote with Jimmy, and Robert really couldn't play during that time. He was in rehab, you know, he didn't play in almost all the album. But we had, you know, he was a virtuoso keyboard player, and we brought in Steve Lukather to play guitar. And it was a great vibe to have that energy again there. And it just was a great comeback. It was a huge comeback. And it was like dying, and you see that bright light, and you brought back, and all of a sudden you really appreciate it. The band really, you know, the band really straightened out. You know, people got into AA and NA, and you know, really everybody straightened out. Robert cleaned himself up, God bless him. You know, it was really hard for him, but he did, and he came back. You know, it was a new lease on life. It was really like, that comeback was so sweet, so sweet. It wasn't the last of our comebacks. We had one more after that, but that was sweet, because everybody thought we were done. They were telling us, radio, we were getting feedback, and you know, in those days you got feedback from radio that they wouldn't play a song with horns. So here we are with a dilemma of we've got to have songs without brass. The horn players are like besides themselves. You know, what do you tell a horn player, like, you got learn how to play, you know, you can play keyboards, play some synth, you know, play some tambourine, you know. It was hard. It was very hard, you know. It was a lot of strife, and I believe that some of that forcing those kind of issues led to maybe my firing, you know. I hurt a lot of people's feelings during that time. I stepped on a lot of toes, but I felt I did what I had to do, you know, and that was, you know, get us back on radio. You know, I didn't do it single-handedly. Irving Azoff was, when he heard Hard to Say I'm Sorry, he looked at me and said, that's a #1 record. I guarantee you, that's a #1 record. And it was, you know. But David, the bringing David back in, giving us that strong direction, the discipline in the studio, and, you know, the revitalization of the band was just a great feeling.
How did you, or did you behave differently on the road?
Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah, to give you an example, I mean, for instance, we'd come into town and it would be a day off, and I'd be coming back from my workout because I would try to work out or play tennis or do something. I used to bring my mountain bike on the road, and I would go ride around town, and it was a great vibe, you know. I'd ride around, get a feel of the town, and get exercise and stay healthy. Try to stay somewhat a semblance of a real life. And I remember I'd be coming into the hotel, and I'd see, you know, everybody leaving, going out. Now, you know, the cats, they'd be leaving. And I'd say, where are you guys going? And they'd say, oh, we're going to a meeting, an AA meeting, you know. And, you know, and in the old days, they'd be going out to score, you know, to get high or whatever, to get, you know. So, yeah, we behaved differently. Became much more disciplined. Yeah, we still had fun. I still, you know, and every so often, you know, we'd let it loose, but we were business. We were serious. And when we hit that stage, it was like, wow, kiss the ground, because, you know, we were glad to be there. We knew we'd been given another life.
Did you have bigger crowds in the early 70s or in the 80s?
Well, I mean, you know, it's relative. You know, we played a lot of pop festivals. How much bigger can you get than that? 150,000, 200,000, 250,000. But, you know, in our heyday, this was like our heyday. We were selling out the big arenas, all the big arenas, doing multiple days. It was teenage girls jumping on stage, storming. Yeah, the second. It was probably the third comeback. We'd had one before prior, but this was significant. This was.
Did you sell more records?
Yeah, Chicago 17, so it was the biggest seller we ever had. At that time, it was like 7 million or 6 million. You know, I mean, our records, you know, I think, but we were consistent. We didn't sell like the Michael Jackson 15 or 20 million, but they were 3, 4 million, you know, 2.5 million across the board. We were platinum on everything, you know. But 17 was the biggest selling record we ever had.
Chicago, the Silver Album. Where's that at?
You mean, well, I would say it's probably 4 million. You mean with Color My World and Make Me Smile? You know, I haven't checked lately, but, you know, it sold a lot. That was our biggest seller before that. But that was probably 3 million or 3.5 million. But, you know, those were big numbers in those days.
That's what I'm saying, up to date with all.
It's hard to say. I haven't checked lately, but it's, you know, probably 17 is probably at 8 million or 7 million, and that's probably at 5 or whatever. A lot, you know. It's significant, you know, for a band like that to sell, you know, the way we did. So, yeah, that was the big comeback. Chicago 16, and then 17 was the culmination of that, you know. And that's when that was Peter's last record.
So how much longer did you stay in the band after Peter left?
5 years, I believe.
5 more years?
I believe it was 5 more years. Peter left. I left. Peter left in '85. Maybe it's 4. I left in '90. Yeah, 85 years.
And so when you left the band, what did you do?
Hid in the mountains of Colorado for a long time.
Did you play?
No. I really haven't played. I mean, I'm just starting to play now again. I did some playing. I flirted with it, but I was so. By the way that it was handled, it really broke my spirit for many years. You know, I mean, you know, happens. Everything happens for a reason, and I believe I benefited in many ways, but I still. It was really hard. It was really hard. I lost my identity. The band was my whole identity. You know, because it was really. You got to understand, it was a kid from Chicago who really had he not played drums, who knows what I would have turned into. I grew up in a Italian neighborhood in Chicago that was maybe the last bastion of mafia. I might have been a thief. I might have been, who knows. I ran with a really rough crowd, and I was in a lot of trouble, in and out of a lot of trouble when I was a kid. I quit school when I was 15 and running with street gangs. So it was music was my salvation, and it was really my whole life, my whole identity, my being was playing drums. And Chicago was an integral part of that, because I ate, slept, and drank Chicago from the time we put the band together until the time I left. I still to this day think, I don't believe there's anybody on this earth that knows what's best for Chicago, better for Chicago than I do. Seriously, because I know, I understood the blood that flowed through the veins of the band, and the personalities, and the dynamics. But everything happens for a reason, and I was around certainly for the best part. So I'm really thankful for that, and I wish them well, and it's still a great band, and hopefully they'll go on and make great music.